welcome back to Giant Talk. My name is Roger. I'm the host for Giant Talk, which happens to be, whether you know it or not, the world's longest running OKR podcast. So, as you know, if you've listened to us before, we always have really, really interesting guests and stimulating conversation. And today, again, for those of you that have listened before, you might well recognize the guest we have with us. Because we seem to be doing something of a little sort of mini-series at the moment with him. So I'm very pleased to welcome back Brett Knowles of PM Squared. So good day to you, Brett.
Hey, happy to be here. I'm glad that we can continue this fun conversation we're having.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we talked a bit about in previous episodes about whether we should link pay and reward to OKRs, which I've already seen some good feedback on. I think that's stimulating some discussion out there in the ether. And we've looked at modern operating systems for businesses as well. And I think in that one we kind of touched upon a little bit about what we're going to sort of spend a bit more time on today. And that's, I know you've been doing some work around using AI or starting to integrate AI into your client work, specifically, I think, Chatgpt. So this is going to be the first of 3 conversations, just to let everyone know, around the work that you've done, like I say, to integrate Chatgpt in. But today, really, we're just going to spend a little bit of time exploring what on earth has happened. What's happened? Because there's a lot of hype around it, isn't there, at the moment? And I don't think a day goes by without it being in the news.
Absolutely. In fact, to be a bit provocative, even your introductory comment shows the misconceptions that are happening around this domain. How's that to start things off? So I want to touch on a couple of things you talked about. And so the good news is we've been over here in North America working with GPTs probably for the better part of a year now. So we're using them inside of OKR processes. And eventually in our third conversation, we'll talk about some of those case studies. But we need to lay the foundation to make that final version of use to your listeners. And the very first thing I want to touch on is, in fact, in your introduction, this confusion about AI versus GPT. So GPT is, if you think of what GPT stands for, right, is a generative pre-trained transformation. And so it generates stuff is the G. Pre-trained means garbage in, garbage out. You've got to put the right content into this thing in order for it to give you something useful. And the T, transformation, is it takes that information and transforms it for you in a generative format. That is not AI. So GPT is basically, think of it as machine learning for concepts as opposed to a robot doing machine learning, whereas AI is making decisions. So think of a graduation between, the standard chart. On the left, you've got data, and on the right, you've got wisdom. And the steps are, data, of course, is just a bucket full of numbers. The first step in processing that is making it into information. So think of taking a bunch of data and you put it in a spreadsheet, and now I organize it by sales rep, by region, by product, right? Now it becomes information. So we've always talked about that transformation of data information. The next step from information to knowledge is I take that information and integrate it. So I take a look at information of sales by region and also by product. And I integrate those two things together with experience, and that becomes knowledge. That becomes something I can begin to understand correlation between events. The next step from knowledge to understanding is being able to apply that knowledge in different contexts. So the simple model there is, we often notice that people who are great musicians are also great mathematicians, and vice versa, because they're both systems and relationships and so on. So that's understanding. I'm taking a body of knowledge from one area, mathematics, and applying it in a different area, in this example, music. Then the final step is wisdom. So wisdom is when I take that understanding and I can make sound decisions based on that understanding. So what that would look like is being able to write music based on my understanding of mathematics and so on. So what we've always thought about is moving data to information. That's what a spreadsheet does. We've been doing that now for a couple of decades. Moving information to knowledge is along the lines of, in a simple model, let's say that's what ERP does. Moving from knowledge to understanding is what's just happened. So GPTs are doing that step from knowledge to understanding. They're taking wisdom in one area, my example of mathematics, and applying it in a different area, music.
And of course, each time it does that, it learns it and it doesn't forget it. So when it's asked the next question, it can factor in whatever information it gleaned from the previous question that it needed to explore and understand.
Right. But the big difference is what it's not doing is making wisdom. It's not making decisions based on that. It's basically giving you a smorgasbord of options that you now need to use your intelligence as an executive, your wisdom to make that understanding useful. So to embellish your story, the simple example is, let's say you come up with a new strategy and you step one is you take that to your executive committee and you say, here's a great idea of what we're going to do. We're going to go enter the Australian market. We're going to go penetrate Australia. And your marketing person, based on their 40 years of experience, gives you some feedback. And the salesperson, based on their 40 years of experience, gives you some feedback. By the time you're done, you've accessed the wisdom of the room. You've got 10 people. They've all got 40 years of experience. If they can remember all 40 years, you've got 400 years of experience at your disposal. Or you could use a simple tool like Chatgpt and say, hey, Chat, take a look at this through the eyes of a regulator. Take a look at this strategy through the eyes of marketing. Take a look at this through the eyes of sales. And every time you say, take a look at it through this different perspective, you're not accessing 40 years of experience. You're accessing 40,000 years of experience. In other words, that wisdom of the room of going to the executive committee is magnified a bazillion times through chat. Now, no different than when you talk to your executives, you still have to weigh out what chat comes back with. And we can go into that in a little bit more detail in a second. But the net is, I'm emphasizing that is not AI. It is not making a decision for you.
No, exactly. I think that's a really, really important distinction to make. And I'm really glad I was able to cue that distinction up for you.
It was clever. It was well done.
No, because I think as much as anything, and if you listen to, you saw, I'm sure, a couple of days ago, Jeffrey Hilton quit Google very publicly, and he's regarded as the grandfather of AI, and he's talking about, we've got to press pause, it's going too quickly, yada yada yada, and I think for the wider audience out there, I think the definition, drawing the line, defining the difference as you just have done there, I think is actually quite important, because you're not giving ChatGPT control of the strategy. What you're just doing is you're just asking, what do you think? What's your perspective? By looking at it through, marketing, stakeholders, whatever. So yeah, I think that's a really important distinction to make.
Yeah, we have the good fortune of Google being one of our clients. And this GPT stuff I got exposed to, I'm going to say 5 years ago. His resignation isn't about the GPT stuff.
No, exactly.
It's about the AI stuff.
Yeah.
So what we're getting all excited about on this podcast is like 5 years old for him. Like, it's not even interesting anymore. That stuff's all boring crap. The interesting stuff is the AI wisdom that we're not anywhere privy to what's going on. But that's what he's looking at, saying, gosh, some really scary stuff's coming out of that. We now need to be able to throttle back a bit and have a little bit more diligence about how we go forward. So yes, to pay attention, and it's, people are in the knowledge of what's going on are getting very anxious about this. Yeah. But that's not the stuff that we're seeing.
Exactly. Exactly.
About this. Yeah. In truth, and you use the example of chat, and we'll talk about other GPTs, but really it's not doing anything significantly different than what Google search has been doing in reality. It's packaged better. It has more generative capabilities. So I saw a great example the other day where someone said, ask ChatGPT to write inanimate pentameter, like the same way that Shakespeare writes about the love between Luke and Leia, right? So for Star Wars fans, they happen to be brother and sister, but they don't know it.
Yeah.
So now Chat's smart enough to know what inanimate pentameter is. It's smart enough to know about, a love that can never happen. It's smart enough to know that Luke and Leia are related and therefore that forbidden love. It understands those things and therefore can apply them. But it's generative. It's not coming up with new thought. It's taking ideas like Lego blocks that already exist and build it in a structure that seems creative to our little tiny brains, but in fact is just building something with Lego blocks.
Yeah, just rearranging the Lego blocks. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example, and we're going to get past chat in a second, but that's what everyone thinks of, and that's what's got the press. So talk about our environment. So as we were experimenting with this before, and it's still the case with chat, that what we did is we took a look at example OKR performance from our clients. And so you see a key result that's triggered red, which means, we need some attention to this.
Yeah.
And I've taken a look at the notes that have come from our clients as they process those in their executive meetings. And let's say they have 2 or 3 recommendations. I've taken the same problem, the same input, and fed it to Chatgpt. Chat comes back with those same 3 recommendations. Comes forward with 2 others, which are absolutely bizarre. Like I have no idea what it was smoking, but it just doesn't make any sense. But also came up with 5 ideas, and this is on average, 5 ideas that were mind-blowing, that team never came up with. They were brilliant approaches, none of which you could actually execute as Chat came up with them, but they opened this sphere of, gosh, I didn't even think about that. Once I see it, you go, wow, that's intuitively obvious. But the wisdom of this team did not contain the experience or the knowledge to bring that idea forward. So now all of a sudden, imagine before your OKR meeting, you go, here's the problem, Chat. Give me some suggestions. Give me 5 suggestions. And you're going to throw out 2 of them. You already knew a couple, but there's going to be 1 or 2 gems that are going to allow your organization to take a leap forward that's beyond what you've ever done before.
Yeah. And I can see, like you say, it's bringing more wisdom into the conversation, far more wisdom into the conversation.
It's bringing more understanding. So you did that again, just to set me up. It's not AI. It's not bringing wisdom. It's bringing more understanding. I still need your wisdom to decide which of those I'm actually going to apply and go forward with.
Yeah. All right. I'll buy that.
Okay. Well, you're begging me to sort of move from the Padawan to the Jedi Knight domain. So Chat doesn't do this. So for a second, think of Chat as a golf club. Now think of a bag of golf clubs. So every golf club kind of sort of does the same thing, but they have a special application. So a putter is really good on short grass, going short distances, but a 1 wood is awesome for going a long distance, but you're not very precise with that tool. Think of there being a golf bag full of other GPTs. You only know of one, Chat, but there are probably 50 other GPTs out there that do specific things like a golf club. And so the trick is we use this in our environment to choose the right golf club for the right shot, right? You and I could be playing, keeping that metaphor going, you and I could be playing a game of golf. And maybe you're having a great day. You're going to take out your 1 wood and you're going to go over top of the water. Me, I'm chicken. Today, I'm taking my 7-iron. I'm going to take 3 hits and go around the side. It's the strategy of what's called course management. Given how you're feeling that day and your confidence level, what the tool set is you have in the bag, which one you might use. So part of what we need to do going forward is figuring out what is the right GPT for each aspect of our strategy development execution cycle. And we'll talk about that in more detail in our next podcast. But also within that, what are we asking of the GPT? So I'm going to take a sideline to what we're asking. So the GPTs can basically fit, I'm going to say, 6 roles in our conversation. One is explore. So explore is where, we know that there's a problem. We don't really know what it is. We want this tool to go off and investigate and give us some ideas. So an explorer. A second is automator. An automator is where we have all the context we need and we know exactly what the step might be. So this GPT can both, identify decide and implement. So say, for example, it's in a simple sense, it's someone's having a problem with, we'll pick on Windows for a second. With Windows, the automator would say, based on all the symptoms you're telling me, you have a problem with the operating system, reboot hit restart and reboot your computer. So they make the decision and they tell you what to go do. So that's just automating a process. I take all human out of that one. The third mode is decider. So a decider is where there's plenty of context, but I need the human touch to go execute. So think of that as a trouble ticket. Trouble ticket comes in, the decider can go, that's a Sev1. Like I can decide what it is. It's a Sev1 trouble ticket. That means it needs to go to this team to go solve. What that does is it sends a note to the person that has the problem and says, we got someone on it, stand by. Then it sends a note to team 1 to say, this is the problem, this is the person, go handle it. And the human goes off and implements. So for the decider, it merely puts the coin in the right slot, we go off and do it. Fourth mode, advisor. Advisor is where there are multiple repetitive decisions to get made, but AI doesn't have the context. And so what happens is AI is going to give you a long list of recommendations. Now, unfortunately, the best metaphor there I can think of is a consultant. As a consultant, we don't actually make decisions for the client. We understand the situation. We give them a long list of options, and they get to shop a la carte. They get to choose what they want to go do. So we're just there as an advisor. GPT can do that as well. So the example I gave you with what are the possible things you could do with an objective that turned red, it's just an advisor. Here are the 10 things you could take a look at. We have to go process it. Eliminator is the fifth mode. With an eliminator, the issue there is, there's inherently creative work that needs to get done that could benefit from machine learning. So what we should be doing is feeding GPT the right things to allow it to give us interesting insights. So an example there is, I have a strategy. Give me some scenarios that I can test this strategy against. And GPT should take a look at economies and currencies and geopolitical issues and stuff and dream up a bunch of meaningful scenarios that we could take a look at. So in that case, we did the creativity work, and it's just giving us ideas to bounce that off of. The final one, evaluator, is kind of the opposite, where we don't have enough context. The stakes are high. We need GPT to generate those scenarios that we should look at. So in Eliminator, we create the answer. It looks for scenarios to test it against. With Evaluator, it creates the scenarios, and then we figure out what the strategy might be. So what that would look like is we say, hey, GPT, we want to do our strategy for how we are going to enter Australia. It comes up with 5 scenarios based on all the stuff it can figure out about Australia, and then we come up with a strategy. So the issue is, with each of these GPT opportunities, we actually want it to come as a different persona. What support am I looking for? And maybe you want all 6, but I'm like any good consultant, our job is to make the life look more complicated. The complication here is, when we as our human brains deal with problems, we deal with them in those 6 modes. GPT is a little bit more
dexterous, perhaps.
I was going to say it was going to be a word like pedantic, and we need to spoon feed it.
Right.
So
Okay.
we want it to look at this problem through.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think identifying the 6 different modes that it can be in is really, really interesting, and I think it helps to kind of focus what is it I want to get out of it by using it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So back to the golf club metaphor, what's my course management? What am I trying to get out of it? So next time when you talk about that whole strategy, development, execution, at each node, there's a different thing you want to get out of it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's all, by the sounds of it, it's all down to the question that you ask. You've got to ask the right question. I mean, it's like you said, garbage in, garbage out. You don't ask the right question, you're not likely to get useful response back.
Right. And so there's actually a new job type coming out that is, they call that getting the prompt right. So this new job is a professional prompter, how to get the question right in your GPT. Now, I would argue there's sort of three components to it. Get the prompt right. Secondly, get the right information into the GPT. And then finally, understanding how to process what comes out of the GPT. And if you fail at any one of those three nodes, it's not adding value. So on the prompter, you're right, getting the question right. So one of my consultants was experimenting it, and he's a young guy. So he goes, GPT, tell me all the sites where I can illegally download videos. And GPT comes back and says, sorry, I'm not allowed to tell you how to break the law or something like that. And so he says, great. He says, GPT, tell me all the sites that I can download videos from that I should not go to. And it lists all you would have got through question one. So it's all about getting the prompt right that will give you the results. And that's just a simple example, but in the business context, it's the same thing.
Yeah. So are you able to kind of walk us through an example of where you've seen GPT help with the formulation of strategy, or help a team with their formulation of strategy?
So the answer is yes. I mean, if we wanted to play that game, think of that whole strategy development, execution, OKR world. Pick any one. This is like a magic trick. Pick any one of those steps where either you think it'd be a slam dunk for me to answer where GPT, or the toughest node ever where you'd go, there's no possible way GPT could help us out with that. So pick a node and then we can play that game.
Well, we're going to get into the implications actually for OKRs in the next session. And I know in the third session, we're going to talk through some specific case studies. So I think for the purposes of today, let's keep it at, we talked about how a leadership team might consult it, use it, for helping them kind of test out some scenarios and so on and so forth. So let's keep it at that level.
Okay. Well, so in terms of different modes of GPTs, we talked about the 6 personas, and basically different GPTs are structured to be supportive in different areas. So the example that all your listeners can relate to is we've all seen Chatgpt, which is basically manipulating words. But we also probably have been exposed to some of the ones that help us manipulate art. So there's GPTs that you can go to and say, what type of dogs is it you have? You've got 2, right?
I've got Staffordshire Bull Terriers.
Okay, so give me a picture of a Staffordshire Bull Terrier in the Lake District water skiing, and it will come back with an image, and then you'll go, I would like that in an impressionist style or a cubist style, and it comes back with that. So it's no different than the story I told you about the poem, but instead of using words, it's using art.
Yeah, I've seen some great pictures of our beloved politicians produced through AI.
Yeah, well, that's similar to your dog water skiing, but it's less safe of a topic. Likewise, you could say, write a ballad about, a terrier in love with a pussycat or something stupid, and it can go write the music. So we think of chat in terms of Chatgpt because it's words and it's, clear, close to clear and present danger. These other tools we're also aware of where GPT, you already know of different applications of GPT. So in that whole strategy structure, there are different GPTs that aren't chat that are going to help you out. So in that the first kernel of think of the very first step of coming up with a strategy. The dilemma is, my example of let's go enter Australia is limited by my perception of what a good idea might be. What if instead I went to GPT and said, here's our company's performance. And think of a SWOT. Here are our strengths, here are weaknesses, here are the threats. Here are the constraints. This is the budget. This is the amount of capital we can get access to. This is what investors that we have want out of us. This is what the market's concerned about with this emerging issue of ESG. We put all that stuff into a question and say, come up with 5 scenarios by which we could triple the size of the business.
Mm.
No different than the example I gave earlier on of give me, 10 things I can do given this red objective. If I say, given this structure, give me 5 ideas of strategy, I'll guarantee you that 1 or 2 I would have thought of. One of them is going to be so bizarre, I'm going to wonder what it was smoking. And the other 2 are going to be those aha moments where you go, I never would have thought of that. Now, wait, let's go. Well, that's a clever idea. Who else has ever tried that? And GPT is going to do clever things like go out and, take a look at the internet to see who's tried to enter Australia. But it should be smarter than that. And it might even do a thing like it's going to go to LinkedIn and go, 3 of your competitors tried going into Australia. And I've noticed that every single person that was involved in that project in LinkedIn now has open for other positions.
Yeah.
And so now you know that strategy, in fact, your competitors tried and it didn't work out. So again, with the right prompt, I'm going to go, I wonder what they did about Australia that I would do differently. And is what caused their failure. So what happens is what might take you, you might not even discover with the leadership team you have because it doesn't have the experience or exposure to come up with those other 2 ideas.
Sure.
When you have those 2 ideas, it can test them in ways that are well beyond what your organization can test. So literally, this happened to one of our clients. And unfortunately, I was in the neighborhood. It was bad timing. Literally at 2:00 in the morning, she calls me up and goes, I just had this brilliant strategy. Why don't we go, in this example, penetrate Australia? We spent an hour on different GPTs going through this. And by the time it was 3:00 in the morning, she had a pretty darn solid strategy about what she was going to go do. Calls the executive team in the morning to say, this is what I came up with. And yeah, there were, we buffed up the strategy a bit, but basically there's no changes. So we compressed a cycle that could have taken, she said historically that takes about 8 weeks for us to explore each one of these strategies.
Sure.
It took about an hour. And what came out of it actually had less iterations required than their day-to-day business did. So it significantly transformed what that step looked like.
Right.
And that's only step 1.
That's only step 1. Yeah.
Because the next step is, okay, given that strategy, you then say to GPT, give me 5 scenarios to test that against. Or using Roger Martin's, play to win strategy, tell me what would need to be in order for that strategy to succeed. So again, it's what's the right prompt? So one is our traditional do scenario planning. Another is, what are the conditions of success which are required? So give me what would need to happen. So, for example, right now, globally, we seem to be wondering if we're in the cusp of a recession. If GPT came back and said, what would need to be true is we'd have to not be in a recession, you would go, well, maybe that's not such a good strategy for this year. Maybe I'll put that one in inventory and try something else. Or it comes back with that, you go, great. Well, what could I do to mitigate if I took this strategy? What could I do to mitigate risk if a recession were to occur? And again, I'm going to have 2 ideas which I would have thought of, 1 idea that was boneheaded, and 3 that are brilliant I would never have dreamt of, and so on. So at each step, not only does it accelerate your agility and your ability to respond, but it brings ideas to the table. Now, at a certain point in time, if we've done this correctly, your listeners are going to go, holy smokes, Batman, I just spent 40 years crawling my way up to the corner office, and now I'm redundant. An 18-year-old that knows how to ask the right questions can do my job.
The march of progress, eh? The march of progress.
Well, it is. Now, there's still a critical mode for executives, and maybe we'll talk about that in the third podcast, just to drive your listeners through the full torture. But merely the work that we do as executives is different today. And it is like the iPod. This is not going away. You can't put this genie back in the bottle. The people that are going to win are those that grab hold of this sooner. Now, are we at that point of transformation? I think chat has taken us to the point where, yes, it is. When we talked to our clients about this a year ago, they thought we were nuts. Now it's sort of, how could you not be doing it? Like the speed of change, of course, is accelerating. This is, a clear and present danger to every leader of any business and organization.
Brett, I think we have had an excellent start there to our little 3-part series here. So to all of those of you out there, the next time we're together, we're going to be talking about the implications of GPT on OKRs and actually working with OKRs. And then the third one, we're actually going to talk through some case studies where you've used this with clients. So thanks very much for your contributions there, Brett. I think it's really good to know a bit more about what's happened already in terms of GPT. And I think the differentiation between GPT and AI is certainly a really useful one, which I'm sure a lot of our listeners have found valuable. Just to remind you all that the second conversation we're going to be having is about the implications of GPT when working with OKRs. And then the third one is around case studies that that you have where you've worked through with clients. So we're going to finish up there. But Brett, is there something you'd like to offer just as a wrap up?
Yes, I would say that my wrap up comment would be that, of course, to repeat things I've said already, first off, this genie's not going back in the bottle. GPT is here to stay. We as leaders need to figure out how to leverage that to our organization's advantage. And it seems scary, as I'm sure people who are riding horses were scared when they saw their first, motorized vehicle drive past them. But like that, in 10 years' time, this will be commonplace. The trick is we're in that moment of transformation, and when is the right time to make the move for your organization?
Sure, absolutely. And if anyone out there has questions about how to use GPT in relation to strategy and OKRs, if you'd like to drop us a line at growth@therebegiants.com sometime in the next week or so, we'd be happy to look at that question when we come to the next podcast. So that's growth@thebegiants. So I'll sign off there. Thank you very much, Brett. And look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
Likewise. Cheers.